Good morning, dear friends. Last day of the convention. Went pretty quick. Why don't we start it as we start every convention day? By the universal prayer. Would you please stand? O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light shining in every creature. O hidden love embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Please be seated. So it is a great privilege and honor to introduce to you today three very fine speakers and also very hard theosophical workers. We will start today's session with the contribution of Krista Umbjarv. Krista joined the Theosophical Society in 2005, and she became active in the HBB Lodge in Tallinn, Estonia, where she fulfilled mainly the responsibility of librarian. She began to lecture in different towns in Estonia as from 2006. Since 2014, she has been a member of the French section, la Société Théosophique de France, where she works since then as a volunteer, and by the way, a very good one. She has also works for the Édition Adière, which publishes theosophical books in the French language, and she participates actively in the publishing of the magazine Le Lotus Bleu, the monthly theosophical magazine of the TS in France. Since 2012, she has been on the executive committee of the European Federation of the TS, EFTS, and she currently serves as its secretary, and I am very glad she does. In 2019, she was elected to the Council of the TS in France, and she is currently its vice president. In 2019, she was also elected to the Council of the ITC in Naarden. Krista is interested in arts, spirituality, religion and meditation since an early age. She believes firmly into the capacity and potential of theosophy to help people transform themselves with a spirit of openness, understanding and compassion. For her, any attempt to understand spiritual truths must be accompanied by service. Knowing all that, you will agree with me that we could easily baptize Krista as the fairy, the theosophical fairy of the Société Théosophique de France. Let us now give the word to Krista.
Good morning, dear brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for the introduction, Sabine. The title of my talk is The Human Mind, This Unknown Laboratory. The word laboratory invokes science, and it is this scientific attitude that I would like to talk about when we try to understand ourselves. A good scientist is unbiased, and although they might have a preference or an idea how things should be or could be, they do not let this opinion or preference affect their work and the outcome of their research. There is something that H.P. Blavatsky said that illustrates this aspect beautifully when she defined who is a theosophist. I read the whole quote, but what interests us most now is what she said in the end of it. These lines come from Practical Occultism, and every time I read them, I wonder what went on in H.P. Blavatsky's mind when she said this. So the quote goes like this: "It is easy to become a theosophist." So easy to become a theosophist. Any person of average intellectual capacities and a leaning toward the metaphysical, of pure unselfish life, who finds more joy in helping his neighbor than in receiving help himself. One who is ever ready to sacrifice his own pleasures for the sake of other people, and who loves truth, goodness, and wisdom for their own sake, not for the benefit they may confer, is a theosophist. I wonder how she found that it is easy to become a theosophist. The first part, like any person of average intellectual capacities and the leaning toward metaphysical, is not extremely difficult, but the more we continue with this quote, it becomes more and more difficult. And she ends with, who is ever ready to sacrifice his own pleasures for the sake of other people. How many people are always ready to sacrifice their own pleasure and comfort? Not many. So in addition to this, she adds that a theosophist loves truth, goodness, and wisdom for their own sake, not for the benefit that they may confer. Loving truth is a tricky question because it means that we prefer the knowledge of reality, what is really there, be it nice or not nice, beautiful or ugly, or however we wish to define it, to our imaginary stories and how we wish things to be. Why do we have such difficulties with truth? In verses 111 and 113 of Vivekachudamani, Sankaracharya speaks of the two powers of the mind: projecting power and wheeling power. He explains that the projecting power of the mind causes bondage. The wheeling power of the mind makes things appear other than what they are. He also continues and says on the same subject that, and I quote, "Every wise and learned man, even wise and learned men, do not understand the Atman. What is simply superimposed by delusion, they consider as true and attach themselves to its effect." These two powers are at work on many different levels, and we should really observe how they function in us, because if we do not understand how they perpetually cause us to go around and around and around in a circle, we will never be able to come out of our current situation. So how do they work in us on a very practical and easily observable way? How can we notice them at work? When we react, for instance, in a way that we do not find pleasant or nice, we tend to hide it away and say that we are not actually like this, that we are something good or we are something nice. So we hide it away, and at the same time we project something else. We project some image of what we have of ourselves or the image that we would like to upkeep. So the problem fundamentally on a deeper level is not that we say that we are good or bad or that we have certain tendencies, but the fundamental issue really is that we do not accept to look at things as they really are at this current moment. And we do not accept to see as they are in the current moment. So we do not deal what is actually here, but we invent another story that pleases us more. So why can't we just look at all our tendencies and the way we react as a scientist? Just observing what is happening, what is true in this current situation. I think one of the reasons why we subconsciously refuse to do it is because we are afraid. And Jiddu Krishnamurti said, and I quote, "One of the major causes of fear is that we do not want to face ourselves as we are." But why is it so? Why don't we wish to face ourselves as we really are? Because it is just us, everything that is near to us, everything that we are. So why is there this fear to see things as they are? Not going into some complicated philosophical reasoning, but just really observing ourselves in action. What can we see? I think that we will be able to notice and observe that we are afraid because we think that everything that we see in us, all the emotions or the thoughts and so on, they are something solid, independent, and something separate. That we are ourselves, we are some monolithic, independent rock that is constantly being hit by different emotions, different thoughts, and different things that come to us. And although it is true that all these emotions and thoughts, they exist on their own level, and we are aware about the idea of thought forms and that they exist and they have been very well described in the theosophical teachings, yet, even though they are there, still they do not exist in this independent and solid way as we imagine them to exist. We talk quite a lot about karma in the Theosophical Society, and I think usually when karma is talked about, it is talked about from the standpoint that it is something that happens to us as individuals or as separate units. That's something that we experience. But I think often the same idea and the same teaching is not applied to our own personality or identity or our own mind. I think until we do not see how our personality is a result of karma and how our thoughts and emotions do not have the meaning that we attach to them, there will always be fear. It can be latent, it can be hidden by something else, but fundamentally, there will always be fear when conditions are favorable for it to manifest. So, when we look at ourselves, we see something general, something separate and permanent and solid. But this is not true. We are what we are due to past causes and due to interdependence. So even here, we are here in this space, and we imagine that we are separate from those who surround us, who sit next to us. But the truth is that other than this physical vehicle that we have, all the other layers of our being fill this space, and we permit one another and unknowingly to ourselves influence everyone around us in one way or another. Being here, if we can be attentive, we also help the person who sits next to us be attentive. And if we are drowsy and sleepy, which might be the case, as this is the first session, we certainly have an effect also on people who are around us. So what we think and feel has this immense impact on everyone around us. And I think last night's lecture about water and the effect that emotions and thoughts have on water was just wonderful. I think everyone who have a bit of a scientific inclination were probably more than convinced that emotions and thoughts have a huge impact on what we are and what it produces in us, as we are mainly made of water. So I have often encountered people who think that what we do does not have any real impact, that we are too small to make any difference. But it's all the contrary. When we realize the level of interdependence there exists and what effect all that we emanate has on the others, we realize the fundamental need for a profound responsibility in our thoughts and in our emotions. We do not need to be clairvoyant to understand this. This is not some complicated advanced teaching. We can observe all this on a very basic level when we observe our interactions with other people. If we don't pay too much attention and we let this natural feeling of like and dislike manifest, then we can observe that naturally we wish to be next to people or near to people who are affectionate, who are kind, who are calm. We look the presence of such people, and also we try to stay away from people who are depressed or angry or who are like constantly complaining about everything. So we are perpetually projecting what we think and feel, and people around us can feel it, and they will be impacted by it. So we need to test and experiment, like indicated very clearly in one of the Mahatma letters to AP Synod. In letter 20, Mahatma K.H. wrote, and I quote, "The illumination must come from within. Till then, no hocus pocus of incantations or mummery of appliances, no metaphysical lectures or discussions, no self-imposed penance can give it. All these are but means to an end, and all we can do is to direct the use of such means as have been empirically found by the experience of ages to conduce to the required object." And then he gives a very long list of tools that can be applied, but I'm not going to list them here, but I instead invite you to read letter number 20, because it has a very profound teaching in it. But so a bit further on, he adds something about these tools, and I read what he said. "How these must be complied with to suit each individual temperament is, of course, a matter of his own experiment and the watchful care of his tutor or guru. So there is this fundamental understanding that the whole spiritual path and what it is a question of experiment, of our own testing. In the end, it is only our own experience that will be the proof that what has been taught for thousands of years is true. We need to be aware what we feel and think. What are the stories that we constantly tell ourselves about the world and about ourselves? This awareness gives immense power because this is the truth, although relative, at this very instance. Tibet's great yogi and poet Milarepa said something very relevant on this subject. Milarepa, probably you have heard his name, even if you don't know the details about his life, but Milarepa is so much loved by Tibetans because he did so many big mistakes in his life that everyone can relate to him. He was not born a saint, but he committed many crimes, and he struggled so much. He struggled with the instructions of his teacher Marpa, who made him do and again redo the same task again and again. And so when in your life there come times when it is more difficult, then I invite you to read the biography of Milarepa, and it will light up your life a bit, and it will also give a bit of a different perspective on what we might be going through at this moment. So after a lot of struggle, Milarepa achieved realization and sang many spiritual songs containing profound teachings. And I would like to finish this sharing with his words. And I quote, "I attain all my knowledge through studying my mind within. Thus, all my thoughts become the teachings of Dharma. May all that we observe in us become the teaching of Dharma." Thank you.
Thank you, dear Krista, for these valuable and also straightforward insights into some pitfalls of the inner life and the human mind. Thank you so much. Our next speaker, dear friends, Richard Zell from New Zealand. Richard comes from a Theosophical family in New Zealand and first joined the Theosophical Society as a teenager in 1978. He is currently the national president of the Theosophical Society in New Zealand and is also past president of the HPB Lodge in Auckland. He holds an MBA gained with distinction and is a past chair of the New Zealand Governance Board. Richard loves all things to do with theosophy, but he is especially interested in the self-awareness and transformation process that is undertaken by the individual and how this can be applied in everyday living. He is a history buff, and theosophical history is near to his heart. Richard has presented throughout New Zealand as a national speaker and has also presented internationally in a number of countries. He contributes articles to theosophical magazines and is very active in promoting theosophy as a founder of the website Theosophy World, which I warmly recommend to you all to go and visit it on a regular basis because it is continually being updated and new material is published. And next to that, Richard is also quite active in editing works, amongst others by Geoffrey Hodgson, and also by his father. Isn't it, Richard? Yes. So Richard will be presenting this morning The Blossoming of Intuition. Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sabine. President Tim Boyd, Mrs. Lily Boyd, esteemed panel and esteemed brothers and sisters, good morning to you all. A civil rights activist once said, "Life's challenges are not supposed to paralyse you. They're supposed to help you discover who you are." By viewing the things that happen to us not as random events, but as opportunities for learning, which the soul has arranged for us before our birth, and karma has provided ample scope for its delivery, we can approach life and its problems from another perspective. This approach often starts through curiosity about the big questions of life, and at some point, the awakening personality becomes conscious that it plays a pivotal role in hastening the journey of the pilgrim soul. Of course, we accumulate much knowledge, much information, record knowledge over the years through book reading, study, self-inquiry, but at some critical point, we also begin the discovery of our true self. As we compare and blend acquired knowledge from external sources about the spiritual path with the discoveries made about our inner being, we find that there is some sort of misalignment present. The soul, which is gradually unfolding on the planes of nature, we call mental, astral, and physical, is often hindered by the personality. When this state is consciously acknowledged by the personality, the journey of self-transformation begins. Moving from words to deeds, however, can be quite challenging for some because it involves a change in thinking, a widening of views, a deepening of our understanding, and much effort and application. There is a wise old saying that after many years of admiring the teapot, the seeker must reach out and drink the tea. Drinking the tea means living the spiritual life, not just talking about it. So how are we meant to change our view on life, leading to an important transformation within us and the type of life we actually live? We could take many roads and side trails in this discussion, bringing into it the sacred text to realign our worldview. We could talk about the disrupting our ingrained social conditioning and beliefs and so forth. But in this approach, we could be a long time. So amidst this process, is there a more direct way to reaching the goal of transforming our life? The answer to this question is yes, but it doesn't really focus on the mind as one would expect, as important as that tool is to our own daily living. The mind combines and coordinates the impressions received from the outer world through the sense organs, eyes, ears, touch, etc. But the understanding of what is being perceived is registered through our Buddhic nature, the vehicle for spirit. We may believe that it is our intellect that shines understanding on a matter, but this is not quite so. We need the application of intelligence to help us in this quest. Intellect and intelligence are not the same thing, although the demarcation line between the two is often very hard to see. With intellect, consider the person who has a very sharp mind, one that is very well developed, housing vast sets of facts and can perform mental operations very easily. However, with the person using their intelligence, They understand the significance of the knowledge they possess, and then they distill it, blending it with experience to come to a ripe understanding or subtle essence, which is often called wisdom. Here we describe understanding through a spiritual lens on matters such as how should we live life, about the understanding of our own minds and how we must act towards others. With intellect, we all know people like this. We say they are intellectual, perhaps scoring A's in every test, but they may not necessarily be what we would call intelligent. Decisions made are not always wise ones. There might be a certain lack of finer aspects in the nature, such as compassion or a strong ethical presence, and they may easily miss the real significance of what is before them. We can see examples of this type of person everywhere, with leaders of countries who start wars with other nations. Now, this can be a very dangerous place to be. And in this, the state of the world shows clearly that we have arrived. Now, Madame Blavatsky expressed this danger in The Voice of the Silence when she warned, even ignorance is better than head learning, with no soul wisdom to illuminate and guide it. In the Mahatma letters, we receive some guidance on the right approach, where one of the masters of the wisdom states, "We want true and unselfish hearts, fearless and confiding souls, and are quite willing to leave the men of higher classes and far higher intellect to grope their own way to the light." The intelligent person, on the other hand, has learned to use their discrimination or discernment, and this faculty is mentioned predominantly in Krishnamurti's little gem at the feet of the Master. Discernment is to be gained by thoughtfulness and a lot of practice. Here, the student dwells mentally on the nature of the real, the one reality. The opening of the door to the real is a type of shift in perspective and is spoken of in the Bible as a self-impelled action. And we read, "Set your affection on things above and not things of the earth. For the things which are seen are temporal, and the things which are not seen are eternal." Discernment, or viveka, is developed slowly through practice and meditation throughout daily life. As we move away from the world of illusion to seeing the world and its problems as they truly are, our awakening to the real increases. This means we view things from a wider standpoint, based on eternal verities, and not from the transitory nature of things, such as politics, culture, conditioning, and prejudices. As spiritual truths are more easily cognized, a higher function called intuition comes into play. Up until now, when a certain situation was before us, a problem or challenge, shall we say, we would utilize our mind to try to resolve the matter and provide a way forward. Facts would be gathered, analysed, and past experience brought to bear on the topic, of course with a healthy dose of conditioning added in to colour the results. Even the higher mind, concerned as it is with such matters as abstract thought, still works through such linear thinking processes. The seeker, however, who is always aspiring to use and develop their intelligence, will approach things in a different way. I.K. Taimni writes in his book, Self-Culture, "When the light of Buddhi shines on the ordinary problems of daily life, it is intelligence. It is Buddhi that is the instrument for knowing spiritual truths. It comes not from the cumbersome process of reasoning from the lower mind, but it comes to us in a flash from our intuition, like a lightning bolt in a storm. It is a direct knowing beyond reason and logic. This is what is called unveiled spiritual perception in HPB's Golden Stairs. and what Master KH called implicit insight in the Mahatma letters. Master KH writes to Mr. Sinnott that if throwing aside every preconceived idea, you could try and impress yourself with this profound truth, that intellect is not all-powerful by itself, that to become a mover of mountains, it has first to receive the light and life from the higher principle, spirit. Albert Einstein touches on this higher principle and that flash of perception when he wrote, "The intellect has little to do on this road to discovery. There comes a leap in consciousness, call it intuition or what you will, and the solution comes to you, and you don't know how or why. All great discoveries are made this way." So how does intuition help or impact us in our daily life, you might ask? With the light of knowledge that comes from direct knowing, we stand on firm ground in living our life. Everywhere around us we can see people wavering, changing their minds, changing direction, quite unsure of the right path to take. In this world, decisions have originated from the mind or the emotions. With unveiled spiritual perception, however, our convictions remain firm, unwavering. We move through life unfaltering with faith that we are treading the path unaffected by doubt. For knowledge that comes through buddhi is connected with life and its fundamental problems. It reveals the essential relations of things. It is a light that first illuminates the life within, which then seeps slowly into the outward life. Jeffrey Hodson tells us that intuition is a mysterious, supernormal power of cognition. It is the power of obtaining knowledge which cannot be acquired by inference, observation, reason, or experience. As such, it is thought of as an original, independent source of knowledge. It is a sort of instant illumination that floods all the lower aspects of the human being and gives a remarkable perception in its depths. And an analogy here would be of a darkened room. The person inside gropes around, touching this, touching that, working out this must be a table, that a chair, or this a painting. But turn on the light switch, and the room is flooded with light, and all is revealed in a glance. One of the masters of the wisdom wrote, "Our conclusions are never drawn from secondary data, but from the situation as a whole." This is how intuition works. The type of knowledge gained is a sense of right or wrong, say in daily living, but it doesn't convey knowledge that is specialised. For example, if we want to know all about car engines, we would need to study cars and get our knowledge of that in the traditional intellectual way through books, study and action. Starting to receive the light of buddhi does not mean to say, of course, that every decision or step taken is a correct one, for we are still learning. Life has before it a bewildering number of options, yet we know that all of it offers inherent opportunity to develop intuition in our nature. Even failure can evolve our intuition if strenuous effort was made to gain greater understanding. Developing intuition depends on stilling our sensory functions, such as when we meditate. It depends on our efforts to still the argumentative, self-opinionated and emotive nature. It comes to us in times of silence, when the mind is placid like a still lake. It takes root in that place, which is between thoughts, when we are relaxed and thought-free. As mentioned earlier, our spiritual faculty of intuition is attained through the process of living, the way of life itself. In living rightly, we may focus on humaneness, general kindness of word and deed, a forgetting of self, and the practice of ahimsa, or harmlessness. So while the mind is not part of intuition, the process of thinking does help develop that which leads to understanding and insight. Mr. Hodgson wrote that to develop intuition, we can get into the habit of thinking more abstractly, more universally, and more in terms of types. He said, in meditation, part of our thought is directed towards this habit of abstracting our attention from the concrete world of forms into the abstract world of ideas. Plotinus spoke of this when he wrote, "You must close the eyes and call instead upon another vision, which is to be waked within you, a vision the birthright of all, but few in turn use." The troubles of life still must be met, but our brave declaration of principles from the Golden Stairs and a growing unveiled spiritual perception will change the dynamics of our whole life. For the soul that can shed light on the personality through Buddhic intuition is a personality that is aware of the unity of all life. Compassion becomes a hallmark in that person's life, and confidence of action is strengthened, whether in service or in the everyday art of living. The results of this process can be seen clearly with the great saints and sages of the world that appear in it from time to time. Most were not learned people of their time, but they displayed insights into the fundamental problems of life, which set them head and shoulders above the rest. St. Francis of Assisi springs to mind here in the famous lines attributed to him. "Preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words." In this, we can see the spiritual verities are infused into every aspect of living life, drinking the tea in a practical sense, whilst all the time we see him setting his affections on things above and not on things of the earth. St. Francis urged us, start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. Life has changed from a mundane terrestrial experience to one that strives to live in the eternal. This change of focus in one's life reminds me of the profound words written many years ago by a master of the wisdom who encouraged an aspirant to leave your world and come into ours. As we seek to let the light of wisdom enter our lives in greater force, we can do no better than learning the art of living, guided by soul through the development of our intuition. If we do this, the cares that seem so pressing to us now will no longer be an upsetting force toppling us from our equilibrium. Our life will now rest in the sacred inner being and in the peace that passeth understanding, where it abides in the hearts of those who live in the eternal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard, for this very fine and discerning sharing of your lifelong experience on the topic of self-transformation, and also to share the key elements to bring that self-transformation about and thus generating the inner light in us. Thank you. And so, dear friends, it's already time for our third and last speaker of this part of the program, Dr. Deepa Padhi, International Vice President of the Theosophical Society. Dr. Deepa Padhi is a retired professor of philosophy from Bhubaneswar, Odisha, who has written a book on the ethical philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. She has edited and published a compilation of articles on women's issues entitled Yes, She Can. In 2020 was published her edited book of Corona Pandemic, The Challenge and Lessons. She also writes articles on social, philosophical, theosophical, and spiritual issues for magazines and journals. Dr. Padhi joined the TS in 1994, and she is presently the secretary of the Deepa Lodge in Bhubaneswar. She joined the TOS, Theosophical Order of Service, in 2006 and became the secretary of the Mahabharat group in the Odisha region and its president in 2010. And in 2016, she became the president of the TOS in Odisha. In 2017, she was elected as the vice president of the International Theosophical Society. In 2013, she was invited to speak on transformational practices at the Summer National Convention of the TSA, Theosophical Society in America. While there, she attended, of course, the International Conference of the TOS. Again in 2016, she organized a conference on theosophical education that involved teachers and administrators from theosophical schools across India. The meeting took place in Bhubaneswar and was facilitated by another big name in TS circles, Vic Hao Chin Jr., the director of the Golden Link Theosophical College in the Philippines. Now, with this track record, we are very anxiously awaiting the contribution of Dr. Padhi, so let's give her our fullest attention to her talk, Self-Transformation Through Values.
Thank you, Sabine, for your introduction. President Tim Boyd, Lily Boyd, moderator of this symposium, Sabine, my co-panelist, Krista and Richard Sell, brothers and sisters. I would be speaking on the topic, self-transformation through values. Practical theosophy, as we know, deals with all aspects of life, physical, mental, moral, and spiritual. The first step in our evolution is to develop a well-defined personality. Most of us have personality which is unstable, complicated, sometimes unsocial also. Because of this inner disharmony, many of us end up living aimless, thoughtless, miserable, and unfulfilled lives. Therefore, it is essential, rather imperative, that an individual develops a strong moral character through meaningful values leading to self-transformation. We are very much acquainted with the oft-quoted verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, sloka number 7, in which Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham, which means whenever there is a decline in dharma or values and increase of adharma, that is erosion of these values in society, I incarnate myself. The next verse says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. For the protection of the good and the destruction of the evil, and to re-establish dharma or values, I incarnate myself in every age. These incarnations could be in the forms of masters, adepts, spiritual teachers, moral preceptors, who take birth in different ages to enable changes in the society, country, and world for establishing dharma. A similar voice was heard in the 17th century BC when Buddha used the words Dharma Chakra Pravartana, setting in motion the wheel of dharma. Today, there is chaos all over the world, for which what we need is dharma, or a set of universal spiritual values, or to use the Vedantic terminology, science of values. Dharma or science of values is absolutely relevant today. Dharma in general is a function of the universal moral order. It is derived from the Sanskrit word dhru, which means to hold together. It is that which protects and holds us together, nourishing our inner self. All other meanings of dharma are secondary in the present times. The most misunderstood meaning of dharma is religion. Theosophy does not promote this idea. Therefore, the motto of Theosophical Society is, there is no religion higher than truth. Satyat nasti paro dharma. Truth is oneness, one pure consciousness and nothing else. Theosophy gives a different meaning to dharma, which is based on love, freedom, compassion, universal brotherhood, empathy, and the dignity of every human and non-human being, which is the core of the science of values. It is something that spontaneously comes from within us. We are ordinary human beings, but within us there is the profound source of value, that is the self, the consciousness. This is what Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, Iswara sarvabhutanam hriddesu arjuna tishtati, meaning God is in the heart of every being. This is also what Jesus meant when he said, the kingdom of God is within you. In Hindu philosophy, there is the concept of Chatur Purusartha, or 4 human values. They are Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. Kama is desires or sensory satisfaction, and Artha is wealth or economy. Both desire and wealth should be guided and regulated by dharma or moral values. Dharma or moral values is said to be the primary factor without which there would be chaos outside and inside of us. Moksha or liberation is universal spiritual value itself. Values play a significant role in our daily behavior, decision making, while facing conflicts, particularly guiding us through the challenges of life and ensure that our actions are consistent with our fundamental belief systems. Values are necessary as they help us grow towards our self-transformation, creating, I would say, a better future for us. As we are aware, there are mainly 3 kinds of values. One is personal or individual values. Personal values are those which guide us through our lives. Each one of us has some sorts of values which guide us in our day-to-day life. Personal or individual values differ from person to person. In fact, our values define us who we are. Number 2, societal or cultural values. Cultural values are passed down from generation to generation that shaped the identity and behavior of individuals within a society. Political, economic, social, and religious practices are much influenced by these values. Third is universal values. Universal values are a set of core moral principles that are shared by people across different cultures, societies, and historical periods. It is considered to have the same meaning for all people and do not change according to the societies, states, and countries. These values serve as the foundation of moral judgments, helping individuals differentiate between right and wrong, good and bad. Universal values are believed to be the basis of human integrity and are mostly moral and spiritual. They are expressed through actions, words, and behaviors. Universal values may be secular. Secular values are based on reason and morality, independent of religious teachings. Spiritual values are universal and guide human beings for a higher purpose. Practice of spiritual principles help in developing self-awareness and self-transformation through reflection, study, meditation, and selfless service. In Bhagavad Gita, it says, Uddharet Atmanam Atmana, which means one should raise oneself by oneself. Nobody else can do that for us. We need to change ourselves, transform ourselves by ourselves only, with a set of universal spiritual values as our guiding principles. The first step of self-transformation is to have a strong desire to change by letting go our negative thoughts, thought patterns, blind beliefs, and emotional addictions. This is most important. Emotional addictions and letting in the positive qualities and values. Eric Fromm rightly says, virtue is the unfolding of the specific potentialities of every organism. For man, it is the state in which he is most man. The journey of self-transformation is a movement of our spiritual growth by strengthening our higher mind and aligning our lower mind to our goal and values so that we will be successful in our transformations. During this transitional period, one needs to cultivate the spiritual values, mainly selflessness, love, sacrifice, compassion, courage, perseverance, empathy, peace, nonviolence. We need to incorporate spiritual values into our daily life so that we can have better relationship with others, inner peace, happiness, and interconnectedness with nature with a higher purpose. Theosophy believes in oneness of life. The whole of this universe is one unity, one existence, physically, mentally, morally, and spiritually. That one existence, one beingness, is manifested in multifarious forms. This expression of oneness is what we call love, empathy, compassion, altruism, etc. And it is the basis of all our moral conduct. Moral and spiritual values must be universally applied. The concept of oneness implies you are a part of me and I am of you. In hurting you, I hurt myself, and in helping you, I help myself. Universality is the outcome of the oneness. Oneness is the basis of morality. Swami Vivekananda gave us a startling simple test of morality. That which is, I'm quoting him, that which is selfish is immoral, and that which is unselfish is moral. Altruism is thus equated to morality and is grounded in the unity of all existence. The same idea is expressed in the words of Madame Blavatsky when she said, "True theosophy is altruism. It is the great renunciation of self unconditionally and absolutely in thought and in action." Altruistic behavior is rooted in empathy, in the ability to put oneself in another's position and identify with his or her situation. Annie Besant calls it the path of progress from egoism to altruism, from selfishness to selflessness, from separateness to oneness. Morality is therefore an expression of what is already intrinsic to the one reality within us, while immorality is caused by ignorance of our own true nature. The ultimate goal of every human being is to achieve self-realization, which is his birthright. In self-transformation, what gets transformed is really the I in us. Self-transformation is the preparation for the ultimate goal, that is self-realization. The apparently divided selves, the outer self and the inner self, merging in one. Well, now the question is, how can we inculcate these values in our day-to-day life? How can we teach these values to our children, to our next generation? Perhaps narrating a real episode in a form of story may give our children the taste of value. A boy around 10 years of age used to go to a park almost every day with his father. And the father used to buy him an ice cream. Usually one finds many urchins, around in the park. When you throw the cup, they would run, pick up the cup, and lick whatever is, sticking to the cup. Every day, the boy used to relish ice cream. One day, the father told him, "Don't you feel like sharing your ice cream with that poor boy who looks at you?" The boy agreed and offered the full cup of ice cream to the other boy who was looking at him. Seeing the poor boy relishing the ice cream, the giver boy, he felt an overwhelming joy. It was far different from eating the choicest ice cream himself. Every day, he only ate ice cream, the pleasure of which was a short-lived joy for the tongue only. But that day, he sacrificed the ice cream to a deprived boy to give him the joy of eating the ice cream. This sharing gave him a different dimension to his joy. Joy really doesn't lie in the eating the ice cream, which is short-lived, but in sharing with the poor child, in feeling for him and making him happy. This single act of giving, which is a value itself, taught him many other values as well, like empathy, sacrifice, joy of sharing, etc. Such small events can really be transformed into a great revelation which can remain permanently in the child's mind. We need to expose our next generation to the stark realities of life and should guide them in the right direction. Values need to be translated into actions in our daily life. Therefore, it is practical theosophy that teaches us how to learn and make use of our values in our day-to-day life, which can lead us to self-transformation, spiritual self-transformation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Padhi, for this most profound contribution on the different expressions of Dharma, the science of values, the practice of which and the introduction of which is so much needed even now in today's world. So thank you very much. And I must say, on a personal level, I was particularly inspired by the example of the ice cream. Being a fan of ice cream myself, yes. So please, dear friends, join me in thanking our three speakers of this morning in providing us with useful and practical teaching to help us all consolidate our day-to-day efforts in leading theosophical lives. And we, as a panel, we thank also you for being such a fine and a wonderful audience. And apart from there being still a few general announcements, we can consider this morning's session closed. Thank you.